So are the microphones working well enough that it picks everything up?
You have to practically put your mouth on it to be heard.
Closer. (7 p.m.) and I'd like to call to order this September 1st, 2022 meeting of the Ferrysburg Planning Commission. Craig, could you read the roll?
Chairperson Rifle.
Present.
Commissioner Carlson. Commissioner Weber.
Here.
Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
Commissioner Schoberg. Commissioner Jonas.
Present.
Commissioner Tuggle.
Here.
Thank you. Consideration for approval the September 1st, 2022 agenda. Craig has sent us each in a proposed agenda for our meeting. Any changes that anyone would like to make to that agenda? Okay, Chair would entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
Accept the September 1st, 2022 agenda.
Second.
Been moved and second, we accept the September 1st agenda as prepared. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Abstentions? Noes? All right, we're all ayes. Item number 4, consideration for approval of the July 7th, 2022 meeting minutes. Craig has prepared minutes from that meeting. And are there any additions or corrections, changes to those minutes as Craig prepared them?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. On number 12, it said applicant for Commissioner Mike DeWitt was not in attendance. And then we have under 10 that he commented on his qualifications. Maybe I'm being picky-unish, but maybe we should revise the former to say that he had left by that point or something, because it looks confusing that we say he's not in attendance and earlier he was speaking to us. So maybe just clean up the language a bit.
So in item 12.
Yeah.
Can we make such a change, Craig? Okay, any other changes or corrections? Okay, Chair would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended. Second? Okay, it's been moved and second. We accept the minutes as amended from the July 7th meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Noes? Abstentions? That's unanimous. Good.
Mr. Chairman, point of
Yes.
order. Do we need to excuse Commissioner and Council Member Carlson?
You know, we did that the last time, I think.
Yeah.
And I think historically we haven't done that when someone wasn't here. We just said they're not here. So I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other. It's obvious he's not here, but it'll be reflected in the minutes.
He did request to be excused.
All right. So you want to make a motion?
I will move to excuse Commissioner and Council Member Carlson. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Put that in there. Is absent due to vacation. That's good. Yes. Okay, we're down to item number 5, public comments. It's customary at our Planning Commission meetings to give the public an opportunity to share thoughts with us early in the meeting and also late in the meeting. So if there's anyone here who would like to share some thoughts with us, please come to the podium and state your name and your address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Well, I'll step up first. So, Todd Camps, 17472 West Spring Lake Road, Spring Lake. For those that are new, my partner and I have been in front of the council a number of times with the channel side storage development along Verplank and then 2nd Maple. I'm thinking about those addresses correctly. So we've we took the old Kraus storage building and renovated that, added on to it, and then we added another dozen or so units in there for commercial storage. So some of those have been used for just pure storage, RVs, boats, cars, things like that. We have a number of units that are also used for local businesses, roofing contractors. I think we had a plumber, cabinet shop, Straight Line Design rent some space from us, and then our last, so that we had three phases there, and then we did Verplank Drive right kind of during COVID, actually. We had started and then had to stop during COVID. We have one business in there, and then the rest are private storage. So reason I'm here tonight is just get some input. We again, my partner, Jamie and Meg Doss, have been my partners on those projects. We're interested in getting your feel if we would do something similar on the southeast corner of Van Wagner and Grand Haven Road. So zoning is commercial currently. There's about a 13-acre parcel, but the seller's interested in selling the north 7. There's a small creek that runs kind of diagonal there, and then the south 4 or 5 acres that he would have remaining, I think are master plan for multifamily. So we would be interested in buying the 7 on the corner. You know, it's been vacant, I think, forever. In doing a similar development as we've done here in Ferrysburg, we did do a rezone with the last development that would allow for a work-live. I don't, if we wanted to address that again for this area, or if you rather see it be more of the, again, commercial condo where you could buy a unit and use it for your business, or you could buy a unit and put your boats or Sea-Doos, RVs, whatever in there. So really wanted to come in tonight, just get feedback, see what your thoughts are. I mentioned it to Craig. He had suggested I come in. One of the thoughts I had is if it made sense to maybe keep an acre right on the corner for more of a commercial, real commercial. I don't think we're going to get the fast food there. I'm not sure we're going to get a bank. We had a bank. Maybe we get a dental office or something, or insurance that might want to come to that corner. You have the office on the other side of the Trillium, of course. The other corner to the north is transitioned, from a bank years ago, and then ultimately that was torn down, and then just some offices built behind it. So just wanted to get your feedback and see if that's something you guys feel that you would support. Then we're going to move forward with an offer, and then we would work through our due diligence, start with site plan. And again, I'm always, I think, for the folks that have been on the boards, we live here, want something nice, and have always been open, for input. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that tonight. If it made sense, then we'd like to pursue it, kind of start going through the steps. If you said no way, we don't want to see that there, then I want to save some time and money.
Quick question. You talking about buying that whole corner lot there?
Yeah, it's about 7 acres, right?
7 acres.
Yep,
on that whole parcel that you said goes on an angle and goes up next to one that's it's still low density residential, kind of stuck in there.
Is that lot city owned, or is that private?
It's private owned.
It's private.
Yeah, it's been owned by the same family out of Grand Rapids for like 40 years, from what I can tell. A long time. Yeah, a long time. A long time.
Talking about maybe putting in what we talked about before, allowing for a living quarters above.
Again, I would love to have that option. And again, for those that weren't here, what we talked about and actually had rezoning where we're at now is if you had a small business, say you have an art studio, and you wanted to actually live above, you could have, the buildings built tall enough so you could actually have an apartment up above and your business down below. So again, I think it's a nice concept. I think it's neat to offer that. But again, I'm really kind of looking for feedback tonight to say, yeah, hey, bring it back to us, and we're semi-supportive. Again, I know all the processes we have to go through, and if you all say, yeah, we like this, that's not a rubber stamp, and we'll do everything we've done in the past, but we'd like to pursue it if I get a good feel tonight.
My thoughts on that, we've been hoping that someone would come there and do some development, commercial development. That's why
Yep.
it's reserved or zoned commercial. Hasn't happened. One of the things that's nice about the kind of developments you've done is they don't need to be right on the heavy road. As long
Right.
as there's, in other words, if you preserve some of the road front, then Wagner Road front for a fast food restaurant or something else, and put your property further south, your development, you have best of both worlds.
Yeah, so that's what I was kind of thinking, if it made sense to carve out whatever, again, I'll say an acre, right, which is for a retailer, more than enough for a typical retailer. Again, small office, if it was office service, again, if it's a State Farm office, it's a dental chiropractor, orthodontist wants to build, they can easily do that on an acre. So I'm open to that. I would probably want to think about some kind of sunset. So if the rest of the development's going well and I'm sitting here for come and see you 4 years from now, and I've had no interest in that out parcel, that we could then continue the development. Again, that's been for sale for a long, long time. So I won't want to get completely locked out, but I'm super open to putting that right on the site plan, having that, laid out with the engineers, right up front. I was kind of thinking that myself, John. I'd like to come on both, my thought was to come on both sides. And then that would allow if we again kind of dedicate that corner to a commercial user, we're not going to want those, the exits onto the street, right there by the stoplight. So my thought would be entering on both sides a little bit further down from the corner, a little safer, traffic slowing, not backed up where you can't get in and out. You're coming in with a motorhome or a bigger boat, and then that way from the internal drive you could access the retail or the office use. Is kind of what I was thinking.
Already one curb cut there on 174th.
Yeah. Yep.
It's in there, and my thought on that corner has always been that if you look north on the township, and it's so hodgepodge from that corner all the way, it looks nothing like their industrial parks.
No.
It's all hodgepodge, and I thought, boy, anything we put in there has got to be able to be tolerant. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Of what that looks like over there until that changes, which I think maybe never.
Yeah.
Not in my lifetime. So I know the city is, what they've done for planks around the Lakes Drive, everybody should take a look at that. Because we've worked well with you. You've worked well with us.
Thank you.
In the past.
Yep.
Architecturally, it looks all good. And you're willing to work, and we're willing to work, and it seems like a good symbiotic relationship to me.
Yeah, and from a tax base standpoint, we don't need a lot of services, right? Hopefully never fire, but we're not bringing in a large residential development or a development that's gonna tax the city. So it's positive tax base in revenue and very light use. We've had great success with the other. We have trying to think how many units we built now, 27, 37, close to 40 units, and just got a great mix of people. Yeah, it's been good.
Who control the other piece of property in Everplanks Drive?
On Carmen, the one on
On
Carmen,
Carmen,
we
they-
do, yeah.
You still
Yep.
have that one?
Yeah, so right on Carmen on the curve,
Yep.
we have the ability, which is already approved for a 5,200 square foot building, which we had, so I have preliminary designs with the apartment style above that. I've had a couple guys that have tried to buy that from us. Yeah, we've been reluctant to sell just because Jamie and I really would like to kind of finish that and do something that would have that type of, live work. But
What-
costs for construction.
What do they
after
wanna put
COVID
on
was
there?
bad. The one gentleman, he lives on Spring Lake, and he wanted to build the 5,200 square feet for his own private storage.
Toy barn.
Yeah, and it was going to be very nice, and he would do a really nice job. And he was even working on my son, who's got a little barge business in town, and he was doing some work for him. He's like, "Man, tell your dad I'll kick it off. He can keep half," and and I'm like, "Well, I got a partner who isn't giving up his." So ultimately, probably Jamie and I would be there, is what I'm thinking.
Todd, we're way over the amount of time we should be allocating to this tonight. But I think, is there a sense here that we're receptive to this? Yeah. So
Awesome.
before you invest money on this, you need the zoning changed? Is that how we?
Yeah,
you'd
I
have
think we'd
come
want to
us-
come in and do a zone change. Yeah, I think probably.
You need to present us some kind of plan of how much
Yeah.
of this area you want to be zoned.
Yeah, so again, I'm probably thinking roughly acre-ish for commercial. There's about 7 acres we would end up with, so the other 6 would be probably light industrial. That would allow, and I think how we drew up the live work, that could be adapted right on this parcel also. We're gonna, yeah, we'll, again, with kind of a positive send-off tonight, we're gonna move forward and see if we can put a successful deal together with the owner to purchase it, and then we have to, of course, we would have it contingent on the rezoning and site plan. We have to do environmental, survey, engineering, but yeah, we would start on it. My hope would be, if we can continue to move forward on it, that we'd be building in the spring.
Consensus of our group here is, go ahead,
Oh, awesome.
We're receptive to
Good.
having you share whatever you plan here.
Okay, and yeah, I would be back as soon as we were able. I don't know if I can make the October, but hopefully by November. Again, if we got to get a buy-sell in place, that's the first step, so. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Thanks for your service.
Okay, I'd like to close the public comments at 7:18. And let's move to agenda item 6, work session, electric vehicle charging stations. And David had sent us some revisions to the document from the last time, and hope everyone has had a chance to kind of read through it and look at it. And he took into account many of the things that we suggested he change or recommended he change. And so he's not here to take feedback immediately from us. And depending on what comes up here, we may or may not be in a position to call for a public hearing next time on this text here. But I'm going to I have some thoughts about this, but I'm going to wait till everyone else has shared their thoughts and then talk about it. So who would like to chime in on anything here in this draft? I see Roger with his
Been
mouth
waiting-
open, but I know your sound coming out.
I've been waiting for everybody else to speak first. I didn't want to go first. But, yeah, a number of things. Number one, you have to be careful of the language in here. Reads that it sounds like you're going to need more parking places than you normally would, which is not the case. you're just allocating some for electric charging. Because if you have an apartment building, you have to have 2 parking places per space. That's all you need, 2. No matter how you designate them. So it's not increasing the number of spaces needed. You just designate them different. And you're not restricting people from parking in an EV space just because it's designated that. You encourage that, but you don't enforce that. But I wanted to make that point. The other point is I think there's a little confusion on electric vehicles, who owns them, how they're driven, and people come home at night, they don't plug their car in right away. It's not like there's this fear that everybody's going to come home and at 5:30 plug their cars in and the grid's going to drop. Well, when people are on their way home from work with a regular gas-powered car, they don't stop at the gas station to top the tank off every day. If they did, we wouldn't have enough gas stations, they'd be crowded. And if you drove, for example, 30 miles to get to work, 30 miles back, 60 miles a day, you could drive all week long, never have to charge. And if you did, you encourage people to come home Friday night, start your charge to go off at midnight, cheaper. And so you're not taxing the grid all at once with a number of vehicles. So I want to make that point clear. So I'm not worried about the number of electric battery-operated vehicles are going to be in the future as far as being able to handle it, because they said the same thing about the horseless carriage. There's no gas stations, there's no roads, that thing will never fly. Well, guess what? And the other thing I want to tell a little story, and that is we just bought a place in Naples from a couple from Germany, and they were leaving their car behind too, and we said, well, how much you want for the car? Well, they made us a deal that normally wouldn't buy it in 2018 Mitsubishi Hybrid, and they said they'd buy 1 tank of gas a year because all it takes is your short runs back and forth to the store. You charge up, you never use gas, and you can get so many miles on it before you ever use it. I thought, that's a good deal. I'd never thought of buying a Mitsubishi. Here's a German couple, and I said, I thought maybe you'd buy a Mercedes or BMW. And this guy is 90 years old, and he said, Mercedes are for old people. And I thought, that's okay. So just to let you know that electric vehicles, I think there's going to be a big place for them. It's going to take time. But I don't want it to be a limiting factor that say we're not ready for them and we don't welcome them. So they'll come in due course. It's all economic. People are not going to trade their cars in tomorrow. Anyway, that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not a Luddite, but I do have, so I'm all for electric vehicles, but I do have some concern about the wording on number 3 of 12 under B, encouraged but not required for new and expanded non-residential multifamily development parking areas. How do we encourage, how does government encourage? Usually with tax breaks or fines or something, penalties of some kind. So how are we going to draw the line of between encouraging and requiring? Or how are we going to define encouraged?
Because encouraged is used multiple times throughout this document.
We talked about that. Yeah, because we certainly can't require anything, but you encourage it only because if you want to rent in the future to people who have electric vehicles, you better have a place for them to charge. Otherwise, they're gonna go someplace else. So you encourage them to have it available. You don't have to, but they're losing out on customers, potentially.
Are you gonna put it in a document somewhere? If you're gonna build this, we encourage you to include this, or how are you gonna, what's the mode of delivery for encouraging? That's the thing that I want defined.
Well, some of the documents that Walt has to, the guidance that's in some of this text that is being proposed here says, reminds builders, you know, are you going to have electric vehicle charging stations? How many?
I'm conservative about that kind of thing, so maybe that's why it bothers me. If people are happy with it. I guess if they're not during the public hearing, they'll talk to us, won't they?
Incentive, you know, an extra 5% lot coverage or an extra foot side yard setback reduction, or
That's where you.
I'm personally against incentivizing or subsidizing. I think it would, you know, if there's going to be a business owner that wants to offer that service, they're gonna reap the profits from that service, and it should be, you know, to the benefit of them and at their choice. I feel like it should.
Want to go to this business, I mean, I can't charge my car while I'm there. I mean, there'll be a natural incentive, it would seem, over time.
That's
Yeah.
free market. That's,
Yes,
you know,
that's free
either
market, yeah.
supply and demand, we're demanding it, you give it to us.
Well, it says but not required, so
Yeah.
it says but not required.
There are ways to make you talk, you know, so it just kind of worries sometimes what's gonna happen.
Yes.
That's what I was talking about. That's where it says the match. Let's see, where did it go? Any parking space located. Sign should have a sign posted that the maximum charging time that's allowed and parking of non-electric vehicles are prohibited. So my concern with not increasing the amount of parking to accommodate the electric vehicles kind of goes back to, you know, if the ownership of the EV station isn't going to appreciate it if a non-EV vehicle is taking up that space when an EV could be plugging in and paying for that service. So I do think that we would need to increase some parking for EV just to make sure that we have enough spaces for non-EV. So the non-EV vehicles are not taking up those EV spaces, because I know people aren't going to want to have somebody parking there and taking away the opportunity for somebody to actually be paying to use that space.
I think similar to handicap parking. That's included in your total. And you, it's illegal to park there, $500 fine. And we're not saying that that there ought to be a fine for here. I'm just saying that to me, it's the same, talking about the same thing.
I wonder if it would be, essentially up to the owner of that property, if they want to stay within the minimum required parking, but they're gonna have to, take that risk of non-EV being allowed to park in the EV spaces.
The owner has to monitor that.
Right,
The city is not gonna monitor that.
right.
It's the owner's responsibility.
Piggybacking off of that, so internal combustion engine vehicles, can I get clarification on what that is?
Gas-powered car.
Okay, so
or
then
diesel.
I feel like, relating to Sandy, I feel like this might be contradictory because it says here in the middle of the first page, it should be noted that restrictions on parking internal combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicle charging spaces are not proposed. But then it says, the point that you just pointed out, saying that there should be a sign that includes parking of non-electric vehicles prohibited. So I'm seeing that being contradictory. Maybe I'm reading that incorrectly. Is it on the first page, it's saying that restrictions of a gas-powered car are not proposed, but then, maybe these aren't related, but I feel like they might be. There's just a little confusion that I'm having. So parking a gas-powered vehicle and electric vehicle charging stations are not proposed, and then it says there should be a sign. Are those contradictory? Okay. Okay, so there's so many different words that it's, yeah, I'm just trying to, okay.
Capable. And the only thing where there's a real problem is this number 4, EV-ready parking space. That's where you can really plug something in. If something that's just got the wires there, but the station for charging isn't in yet, that's not really usable EV space.
So basically what we're saying is the only people that can enforce that are private property owners. It says private property owners can't enforce this, but if they called us and said people are parking in my charging station area, we'd say, too bad, that's up to you to take care of it, right? Okay, that's kind of a nebulous issue too.
I'm certainly not in favor of government overreach, and I don't think this is designed to be the heavy hand of the zoning administrator enforcing all this. This is just a framework, and it lays out that the city of Ferrysburg is ready for you, is ready for what goes in, but there ought to be some encouragement and regulations on what goes in private property. A brand new property you can negotiate on if they require a site plan. So that's a talking point you have, but it's not, we're not going in people's garages and saying you can only park with your EV car here, you can't put your gas car in there. This is not what this is designed for.
Wondering if having David to talk us through this one more time might be better than just moving forward to a public hearing. Because he may have some insight that could help us. This is new for a lot of us, so it is,
I agree, and the comments that I was making was more referring to commercial parking lots, where, businesses would be offering that as a paid service. I wasn't referring at all to anything residential. But yeah, I think this is new territory, and it's good to take our time on it and get more feedback.
Because we're saying there's no need to, or if there's there's talk about a gas-powered vehicle parking in an EV charging station, but I don't know that that would be an issue in a large parking lot, but in a small parking lot, it might be, so, yeah. Yeah, I mean, in Meyer, there's never any cars in those stations, but in a small, Tony's, it might be a different story, I don't know.
Chairman. What I wonder is, it says in more than one place that the applicant has the responsibility to provide historical usage of a parking lot for internal combustion engine vehicles, and it says that again. How would they do that? Who keeps track of that? I mean, yeah, we've had 50 cars parked yesterday and 200 the day before, and 10 years ago we had 15. I mean, that just seems like nebulous to me. Again.
Someone is preparing to put a new building up or something or enlarge, and they see that, they'll say, I didn't even know I was supposed to be doing that. I mean, just the issues, so that would catch them off guard.
And in my, I guess my thinking too, I was thinking kind of in the scenario of, which we don't have a lot of around here, but residential type complexes, apartment buildings or condo parking, everybody has a little bit of extra dedicated parking kind of off somewhere else. But if they were to count all of the parking spaces and say you can include EV stations within those, it seems like parking is always at a premium, and people are gonna have sometimes no choice but to park in the EV stations unless they were some extras somewhere else. And that's not as important probably in Ferrysburg because we don't have that, as many of those situations. But
Isn't it, Roger, that you have to have 2 parking spots per unit for a condo now? We don't, extra parking spots where I live because it was built long before that. So, that would cause an issue for us for sure. There are already parking issues, so, yeah.
I'm gonna go over my concerns with you. When we get to this stage of a change like this, I always like to sit back and say, let's suppose I wasn't part of the development of this and didn't know all the ins and outs it was talked about. And suddenly I was confronted, as Craig is, with enforcing this. And this is put in front of me. How would I really know how to enforce this? What kind of questions would come up? And so just thinking I know nothing about it, and here's this thing I'm told I need to enforce this. And just go through it here and see what happens. And a number of things come up. One is the issue of that's already been raised here. If you have a lot right now that has customers and they're taking up most of the slots, and you're asking to expand, does that mean they all have to be EV, or in other words, you don't have any excess spots to make EV units? I mean, that's a challenge. But just looking forward here on the second page of the draft here, item number 3, it says, based on the increase in electric vehicles, is encouraged but not required that all new and expanded non-residential and multifamily development parking areas are EV capable or EV ready for level 2 electric vehicle charging stations. So it's saying this is exempt for single family housing. Is that what I'm reading here? It says all new non-residential, so that's commercial, industrial, everything else, and multifamily. So what it's really leaving out is just private residences. Am I reading that right? And is that saying then we're encouraging them, if you add any parking spaces, they should be EV? We're encouraging, not requiring.
to enforce.
Yeah,
There's nothing to enforce.
nothing to enforce, but that's what it's saying, right?
It's just encouraging.
Yeah,
This is not an ordinance that's punitive. It's just that,
no, right.
this is just
right.
saying, this is a stance that Ferrysburg's taking and encouraging that you consider putting these in at the time. We're not telling you, you ought to put a swimming pool in at the same time. You know, this is just what's coming. It just allows a framework for encouraging. Like just Todd came here tonight, we're encouraging him, you know. We're not enforcing anything.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Let's go down a little further. Section 6.100A, intent. It says to plan for the increase of electric vehicles and expedite the establishment of a convenient, cost-effective electric vehicle infrastructure. This section authorizes required or excess parking spaces to be used as electric vehicle charging stations. Authorizes required, encourages or suggests, but the word is required is there. What does it mean authorizes required? Yes. Help me understand that. I'm trying to enforce this rule. I'm Craig here, and so what does that mean?
The way I read that sentence is that it authorizes existing required excess parking spaces. Required or. So it would allow EV to be put in existing parking spaces that are required parking spaces. That's how I read it.
As
I could be wrong.
Rosanna Dana used to say, never mind. I just read that word for word. And,
It is a little awkward sentence.
but now when I hear your take on it, I see it. Okay? And Craig sees it. You see, someday may have to authorize or run this. Okay, let's go down to the bottom of page, item C. It says accessory use and accessory structures, and it goes on to talk about it. In our zoning ordinance, we have definitions. There is no definition of accessory structure. There is accessory use and there is accessory buildings, but not accessory structures. So if you go through the ordinance here and look at the definitions, I think he needs to call, where he says structures here, he needs to call that a building, or else we have to introduce another definition, accessory structure, if you're seeing what I'm saying. Not a building, that would sound funny, wouldn't it? Yeah. So need to have a new definition for accessory structure. Okay, then if we have a new definition of accessory structures, then we're okay. Oh, back in A, where I was confused before, we don't say anything about at what level this charging station needs to be. Do we need to say at least at level 2 station? I mean, somebody could run out a 120 line out to this place and say you can plug in your car and it'll sit there for 12 hours to get 60% charge. I think maybe that's implicit in what we're doing here, but. Would be, okay. Right. All right, and then coming down on the second page. Coming down to item F3. It says electric vehicle charging station equipment shall be no less than 10 feet from property lines in public right-of-way and shall not be located within a clear sight triangle per section 390. Then it says electric vehicle charging station equipment may be located in front of, side, or rear yard. Do we want electric vehicle charging station in the front of a private residence? If somebody wants to put one in? Houses would have parked driveways and have charging station on there? Or do we want them in the garage? Yep, we could put on the side of the house, on a hose, on the edge. Yeah. I'm saying this, I'm just thinking about this in the residential districts, this might look funny out there. It's like having a gasoline pump on your driveway. Not for long. We do for small ones now.
Depends on, my neighbors think it's year round.
So I'm just asking, are we okay with this? Because that's what it would mean if, as I'm reading, as someone who doesn't know anything about it, I'm trying to interpret it. And somebody comes and says, Craig, I'm putting my charging thing out there on my front driveway.
I was wondering if we should put in there, should not be in the required front yard. So at least has to be 25 feet back from property line. That's where our house is. That's just a thought.
Well, you're seeing the issue. A lot of garages come right after the required front yard, don't they? There's no space between required front yard and the garage, maybe in lots of houses. So if it's not in, if we say not in the required front yard, they have to be in the side yard or in their garage.
So on a residential, it's gonna be attached to the house someplace, because they're not gonna run a separate, like, gas pump out to their driveway and put all the lines out. They're gonna run it through the garage or through the house and attach it to the house.
Pay all that money.
So is this okay, or should it be modified? I don't think we want to require anybody to have to drive the car around the side of their house to do this, no. It isn't in the garage, though. I think when they have some high-powered charging station, it should either be in the garage or really close to the garage. This says they can put it anywhere in the front.
Are people that do have, detached garages too, accessory garage or whatever. I don't know, I guess maybe if we're gonna get technical on placement, it includes, accessory buildings.
Area shall be maintained if installed on a sidewalk, walkway, or another area accessible to pedestrians, cyclists, or wheelchair users, abutting a parking lot. I think what they're saying is, this is parking spaces, and this is a sidewalk. It's saying, at least 5 feet of clear area shall be maintained. I think the 5 feet of clear area is on this side, right? Not here. Otherwise, you're gonna have cords going across there. So the sidewalk has to be wide enough so that there's 5 feet from the charging station to the other side of the sidewalk. Is that how, are we interpreting that?
Property line. So it would have to be 5 feet off the property line in the parking lot. A parking lot has to be 10 feet in commercial industrial and 20 feet from a residential property. So parking lot's gotta be at least 10 feet off the sidewalk.
I'm thinking what this is trying to say is we need a 5-foot sidewalk for people to, bicycles or wherever, walking here without tripping over cords. So if they're gonna have a charging station, it needs to be on the parking side of the sidewalk. Is that right?
I think, I don't even want a sidewalk in there, do we?
They installed on a sidewalk. Installed adjacent to a sidewalk. Something like that might make more sense. We
don't want them installed on the sidewalk. So
More or less halfway.
can't you just say these stations must not impede sidewalk traffic?
Right, exactly. I think a lot of this should just come out personally, because if
Yeah.
there's already requirements of, you know, buffer zones between sidewalks and parking lots, then it should already be sort of handled.
And then we go back to, you see what we're saying. Those were my comments. But I think all of us have kind of come up with an array of comments here that maybe suggest we're not ready for this to go to a hearing. So, Greg, if you think you're hearing what I'm saying here, what we all have said, and convey this to David, you can come back with it further. I mean, it's not like we need to have this done next month. Good to make progress, though.
Yeah, we're kind of breaking new ground here as far as where things are going, so the more time you take, the better. You know, we spent a year on animals and more than that, and campers and everything else. And I think that there's a way to get this right. I agree, it's confusing in places.
And you know, we can't be the only city that's facing this, and that's why we have David, and David ought to have some perspective on how this is done other places and have language that, I'm sure that's part of some of the things he's incorporated here.
Cut and paste.
Yes, cut and paste.
rely on our neighboring towns too. They're going through this, Spring Haven, Spring Lake, I mean, yeah.
So, are we good for electric vehicle charging stations?
This is something that you talked about earlier.
Did you send that to all of us?
I did, I think I just sent it to you. It's at, soon, Washington Post, soon electric vehicles could charge faster than your iPhone. I mean, the technology is changing so fast. And I printed out a whole nother article. I've got a whole collection, a file of this stuff about Norway and how many, and that's a big country, and how electric vehicles have really taken over the country, and especially the capital city of Iowa. So, you know, we're kind of behind.
So let's move on then from this issue to public comments, and seeing we have no more public here, let's open and close public hearing at, or public comments at 7:55. And we're on to a zoning administrator's report. Craig, do you have anything?
No report?
Okay, chairman's report. Craig included in our packets comments that Elizabeth Butler prepared on the Ferrysburg Economic Development Task Force that did a walkthrough through the service district. And there are some things in here that we've observed there and also in the Pine Street district that have implications for our zoning ordinance, and gives things to think about here. But I'm thinking, I think my preference would be to wait until that Economic Development Task Force presents its recommendations to city. Then they're sort of official. And then if there are things that are in there that would be relevant for us, that would be the time that we kind of address and look at them and see if we do or don't want to do something. But thank you for including this, Craig. Any questions about this? If you looked at this, you might have wondered, what is this? No, okay. Because I know you read it very carefully, right? So that's all my comments. Members, reports, comments. Anything? No report?
No report.
No report? Heather?
Without my kids this time.
Poor thing.
It's
I don't-
our 20-year anniversary, so.
I don't know if we can make an excuse for
Kids are
that.
staying
No, it's
home
not
this
excuse, no. I think you'll have to come back to the.
But I'll be
meeting.
back in November, so I hope Todd doesn't make it back till November. I'd like to hear.
Well, have a good trip.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, John, I was just gonna talk about this Economic Development Task Force,
Sure.
the minutes. I mean, I was not present, but I really enjoyed reading about, I mean, there's just history about different buildings that I never knew of. I've lived here my whole life, and yeah, that's a really cool thing. And if, yeah, I would love to be a part of that someday. So that's cool. And then, Craig, I don't know if we can get an update. Is there any new update on our current situation with Roger and our, you know, him leaving and the whole issue? Have there been any new, I know that's the elephant in the room, but I'm just, because we didn't have an August meeting, I'm just wondering on an update on that.
No change.
Okay, and I'd kind of like to bring that to the board, where we stand. I mean, I feel like we're kind of at a stalemate right now, so I don't know, I just want to remind myself what my role is, and I think, yeah, I don't know if anybody has any comment on that, or there's none.
I feel bad for Roger.
Well, that's kind of where I'm coming from. Like, I mean, he's being such a great team player, but.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm like Serena.
But you want to, and you want
Still got a
to.
few
Yeah.
moves left, right, as you said the
Yeah.
other night.
I've got more left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like we're kind of in this
Yeah.
stalemate right now, and I don't know if it's in our best interest. Just, I don't know. Yeah. Everyone has their own opinions, but.
I too
Kinda
learned
out of
stuff
our hands.
serving on that development task force about the city that I didn't know. It's very informative. Roger, comments?
Just want to comment on that too. I'm a member of the task force, but I would just want to tell you and Craig that I won't be at the next meeting because I'm getting a new hip that same day. But anyway, it's supposed to be outpatient, so I might show up. I'm not sure. I'm thinking. But what else was I gonna mention on that? Oh, since I won't be there, I will jot down some thoughts that I had on this too. And I wasn't able to walk around with everybody, but reading this, Elizabeth does such a great job putting it all down there that I learned things too. I've lived here 42 years, longer than you have. You're not that old.
So the Economic Development Task Force, that is comprised of the two of you from the Planning Commission?
Actually, Craig solicited people to volunteer for it, and Roger and I volunteered, but there's really about 7 people on it, right? Including the mayor and another council member. Okay, anything else? Let's call the meeting adjourned here at 8:02.
What time I can leave? 4 weeks from tomorrow. Oh, there's quite a mile.
Craig, I sent an email to,
Yeah, we're doing Maui for about 11 days, but we are seeing it 2 different places.
why am I drawing a blank his name?
Yeah.
From Fishbeck.
Closer, you know, like.
There's lots to see from
Roman.
one side to the other. You have to go down to Hana,
Sure.
go down it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.